All right. Well, nice to see you. Good to have you.
Yes, thank you.
So this is going to be an intimate gathering. It's our first event of this type. And the purpose of it will be to really explore, what our individual doctors focus on. And as we put together a book on this topic. So the topic is unaging. And how do we create a system that actually helps us live longer, healthier lives and use all the modern technology today rather than 50 years from now? So I don't know if you guys ever met Dr. Rosenthal, but he's a biophysicist. He is double board certified in sleep medicine and regenerative medicine. And so today we're going to talk about all of these things, but what makes him most interesting to me is that he actually left the practice of medicine. He was working in a successful practice, building insurance, doing all the regular things that people do in medicine. And then he decided that that was just not for him. So he left. And I don't know if you can appreciate how much courage that takes. So the reason he left, and I'm sure he'll share that with us, is that he just wasn't fulfilled in his world, because the modern medicine, what it does primarily is manage chronic illness. So a lot of doctors find themselves very frustrated because they invested a decade and $250,000, $500,000 to become doctors, and once you enter the medical field, you have no idea what you entered until you're in it for a year or two or three. And then either you get along to get along, or you, if you're more rebellious by nature, then you find other ways of doing stuff. So, Josh, great to have you, my friend. Thanks for hanging.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. Yeah, I mean, I think what you said is really interesting in that when you start this journey as a medical doctor, I went all in, to the process, assuming that I would come out. If you think of this like a tradesman, a blacksmith, you have certain tools of a blacksmith should have, and you're going to know how to make a knife and a sword and a gate and a whatever. You're going to know how to shape all metal. And so you go through the process and you come out and, you have tools. And I can tell you, I'm sure that the physicians, 40 years ago had a lot more pride in their work because they had more success, because people were less sick. So the tools seemed to work a little bit. But I think, especially anybody that's starting as a physician now or in the last 2 decades, I think over time, if you don't recognize that things are changing in a way that you can't explain, then you're not really paying attention and being honest with yourself. When I started out, I felt like I was making a difference. And then, after a decade, you realize, well, why am I not making the same difference? I'm putting the same effort in, right? In other words, I didn't decide I'm going to work half as hard to help people. I'm working the same amount, putting the same amount of effort in, but yet the results are not there. And so that's one of the major problems. So, what do you do when you come to that juncture in the road? Well, you're faced with a really difficult pill to swallow, right? That this training and the best years of your life, $250,000 in the best years of your life, you have to then throw those in the trash and decide that there must be something else. And so, yeah, it's a tough one. And I think a lot of physicians have this moment. They're given the red pill and the blue pill. And I think a lot of them, it's easier to take the blue pill and, just go back into the matrix and pretend, the steak tastes just as good as it used to.
Right. So I think we saw it over the last 3 years, just how conforming most people are to authority figures and how few actually rebelled against it. So
the system is beautifully created in that, since I started as a physician with the induction of the EHR and all the mandates and regulations of how you have to comply to bill, there's so many layers of documentation and work that has to be done to take care of somebody that you don't really have all that time to say, am I helping that person? Like you have to run a marathon just to get to the end of the note. And most of that had nothing to do with helping the person. So it's a perfect system to keep you distracted from the actual truth that oh yeah, I'm supposed to, I don't know if I even asked him how he was doing, right? I mean,
Right. You don't really have time to think. It's like
yeah,
sit and
there is
think
no
because
thinking. Yeah,
you're always doing busy work.
yeah.
So we have Eliza, Barry, Bastian, Christine, Juliana here. I would really appreciate your help in conducting this conversation, this interview. So whatever direction you want to take it in, guys, please feel free. Just throw up a question. If you want to speak on here, you're welcome to do that. Let me know. But if you don't want to do it, then I'll do it.
So yeah, Elisa made a comment. She was interested because light programs melatonin production. This is a very, very key statement she's made. And she wrote, if you don't get enough, then the melatonin isn't produced properly. Since it's the master antioxidant and reparative hormone during sleep, this can be impaired. Yeah, so I'll just say that Elisa is certainly on to most of what I practice is mitochondrially based and circadian based, meaning I focus on timing, because you get timing right and you get optimal energy production. And I focus on restoring that. And unfortunately, our body was designed to be this amazing electromagnetic sensor. So it's like reading all the information that the environment has to give. And light is, the most commonly changing signal that we get based on our latitude and longitude, time of the year. So like right now, I'm in New York. A month ago at 7 o'clock, it was pitch black. There was no sun. Sun's still out. So, this is an important, and our body has all kinds of sensors to detect this light information and tell our body what to do. We use the frequency information that's in the light to tell time, both on a day. So like right now we can say, hey, it's 7 o'clock. But it's 7 o'clock, like I said, 7 o'clock in March versus April versus June. Those are very different 7 o'clocks. 7 o'clock in June and July, I mean, the sun's going to be really strong. We could be outside having a barbecue. It's kind of dusky now, so that information is being communicated, whether you recognize it or not. And, once the sun goes down, and this is, like the most crucial topic of the chapter that I wrote in an integrative textbook. Once the sun goes down, human beings, no matter what you want to do thereafter, were designed to have no light of the frequency blue at all whatsoever. We were designed to really not have any light, because if we were living in the middle of nowhere, once the sun goes down, there's no light. And that problem that we created by having a technologically advanced society is catching up to us today. We see diseases that we've never seen. We see diseases that we don't see in third world countries. They don't have some of these. They don't have fibromyalgia. They don't have, some of the depression and some of the mental illnesses that we have. They don't have any of these diseases. So are we more disease prone as human beings in the United States? I mean, is that the explanation that we really want to buy, or have we gone so far away from the natural programming, right? And yeah, so when you are exposed to artificial screen light right now, most people watching this are, shortly I'll switch over to a pair of glasses that will then block all of the blue frequency light, so I can connect my brain to the time of the year. So it will know how to run my glucose metabolism. It will start making the melatonin, right? And I think, one of the misnomers of melatonin, and Elisa really caught it very well, is it's the number one antioxidant of the brain. And what do we see today as a big problem, Alex? Neurodegenerative disease, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, all these brain things. How about just the amount of brain fog that you see, in people, middle-aged people, our colleagues, and like, oh I just can't remember it. That's not like recorded in any epidemiologic studies, but I can tell you, if you poll your friends, most people will say my brain doesn't work well.
Well, I'll tell you something. I think a lot of women who are in their 40s and 50s, and even if they eat moderately well, what happens for most of us is we become toxic with heavy metals, parasites. Our digestion becomes damaged because of the pharmaceuticals and the antibiotics. It becomes leaky, inflamed, so we're not absorbing the nutrition from the food that we're eating. So there's a lot of factors in our environment. I guess the light as well. So, by the way, like after hearing you speak a number of times, the hour before I go to sleep, I usually sit in the dark. I listen to some classical music, and I just let my brain like get ready for sleep. That was not my regimen for many years, and I find this to be amazing because the sleep becomes so much deeper, and the dreams are so much more vivid, like amazingly vivid. And it's an incredible like little adjustment that I did, which is very, very empowering. I mean, I already saw everything on Netflix anyway, so I don't know.
So that's the key, is that, when you build melatonin, I mean, I don't disagree with any of the things you said as factors, 100%. We live in a more toxic world today than 50 years ago, right? So, but when do you detox from those heavy metals? When do you repair your gut? When do you make your hormones? When do you do all these things? It's in your sleep. So when you live in a toxic world and you don't get sleep right, that's like, not having brakes and going down the steepest hill in your car, right? I mean, you just have no ability to control the downslide that's about to occur. Controlling the toxins is absolutely important. But at the end of the day, the world has always had mercury. That's that there are some toxins that just exist. Fluoride is naturally in our water in a very, very, very small amount, but it's never been zero. It's not like all of a sudden now we have fluoride, we never had it. So a lot of these things, I don't think people realize that you need to be able to deal with this stuff. And we always have, as human beings, had to deal with some of these toxicities. So
truly over the last 20 years, I mean, like when I was growing up here, even we never heard of gluten sensitivity. That was just not a thing. And so when I first started doing my conferences, some of my doctors started talking about it. And then like a few years later, we saw Italian restaurants gluten-free. So if that's not a sign for the end of days, then right. I don't know what would be. So something has gone wrong someplace. Something has changed in our environment, because we certainly didn't change in 20 years.
Yeah, but all the changes are man-made. In other words, the amount of toxins that are in the air and the water, I mean, where did they come from? They came from us making chemicals and then dumping them into the water table. That came from us, putting stuff into the air. It came from us putting something that we feed to the food. And so now I'm eating food that's eaten a toxin, or they deliberately put in toxins to make them fatter, or, so again, most of this is all our own fault. I mean, we don't see it.
It's not our fault. It's,
yes,
it's their fault.
In other words, nature didn't do this. None of this is nature's doing.
So we have a couple of questions here. Juliana is dealing with hypothyroidism. So you actually, when we spoke with Kim Alexis, you spoke about that, and I thought that was very, very interesting. I never heard anything quite like that. And then Eliza, I'm interested because light programs melatonin production if you don't get enough. Yeah, right. So we saw that. And then, do you think eating food from different latitudes has different light program can be detrimental? Eating avocado, banana. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll take what Elisa was trying to say. A perfect example of bananas. In the nutritional world is whether fructose is good or bad for you, right? And so if you go through the literature, you'll see there's conflicting ideas. So that, at the end of the day, both sides can't be right. In other words, it can't be good and bad for you. It either is good or bad. So there's got to be a differentiating factor. And so then if you look at the research, some of the research, and I'm making this up, is like from Toronto and some from Southern California. Well, do you think that those two latitudes are markedly different? Yes. And of course, you're going to find that the farther away you get from the equator, the worse fructose and bananas are going to be for you, because you don't have the strong UV light signal to process that sugar. I mean, it's still a natural, sugar. It's not man-made. We didn't make fructose. We made high fructose corn syrup. That's different. But just bananas, they have fructose. And so, but you're designed to eat these things when they grow naturally, because the chemical bonds, the energy required to process that was made from really high energy light. And if you live in really low energy light, guess what? The processing for you to process that is equally as high, natured energy to do so. So when you live in really low energy light, i.e. the winter in New York, and you go to Whole Foods and buy a banana from Chile, which is strong UV light, and we're in zero UV light we're in vitamin D winter, there's a mismatch there. And, that people don't want to realize this, but that information is like a hard drive. That banana is like a thumb drive that you stick into your computer, has information on it. It's not just the taste and the nutrients. Where it was grown, there's that same information that I said that we're reading information from the environment. So is the banana. I'll give you a perfect example. Wines, people like wine. Well, wine is a part of the Mediterranean diet, right? And that's one of the things that people wondered if that was part of the longevity equation, talking about on aging. And then they found resveratrol, which is one of the polyphenols in grapes that seems to make mice live longer and has all these great abilities to turn on all these wonderful longevity pathways. And so you say, well, grapes make, resveratrol, grapes are good, wine is good. And so, but not all grapes are the same. And certain grapes, if they're stressed a little bit more, they make more resveratrol, right? And so it turns out we live in Long Island. Long Island white wines happen to be very high in resveratrol compared to other white wines. So even when you say a grape, where it's grown and the stress and the environment that it grew under changes its, we'll say hormonal, even though resveratrol is not a hormone, it's kind of like mix. And our hormones change in the summer versus in the winter, And so the same is true, the chemicals in the plants.
Awesome. Let me take you back a little bit, Josh, if I could. I want to know what prompted you to want to become a medical doctor. I mean, that's a very hard road. You knew that. What inspired you to take this direction? When did you know you want to do it?
Yeah, so as soon as you said that, I was brought back to 10th grade biology, my AP bio class. So I doubt my teacher, Mr. Reddy, is listening, but if he is, I thank you. I think his name was John, but Mr. Reddy was his name. Anyway, I always loved how things worked, and when we got to biology, it was like, machines and cars, they're mechanical, so that you understand there's an axle and a wheel and a motor, but it was like, we're like this moving around fluid, dynamic, organic creature. Like, how does that work? And so I remember just being so totally amazed at all this stuff, and flowers and all that stuff in biology is not that exciting. But then you get into the, mammalian side and living stuff. And we actually, I'm sure it's appalling now to many that are listening, but we dissected a fetal pig. And, I remember my lab partner, Brian Flynn, buddy of mine, we were doing it and we were done. It was the last day. And I remember the dissection manual didn't dissect the brain. And I thought, I want to honor this pig. I'm not going to let this pig, go to waste and not have, taken every bit of information that this pig could give to me. And so, I was like, you want to come back at lunch and let's dissect out the brain a little bit. We owe it to this pig. And that was when I knew, and probably that's when I knew I was a surgeon too. I mean, I really enjoyed dissection, and so the medical side, the surgical side. You get all these parts. It's like you're a human mechanic, and that's really what I still am today. I just do it on a subcellular level. You can use other types of tools to get the cells to work better. And then the beautiful part is we're all standing here because a single cell was made with information and energy to create a whole human being. So who am I to think that I can, with a pill, powder, or potion, make you any better than you already made yourself, right? So I just need to help you get out of your own way. That's really...
I love that, because, the whole system right now is focused on how much we can do so we can build the insurance company for doing. You don't get paid for not doing. You don't get paid for telling people, don't eat the banana from there, eat the banana from here. Stay away from your computer at night for the hour before you go to sleep. No, you don't get paid for that. So I think that's the major flaw in the context in which our healthcare happens. And so, doctors like you who saw the light and were brave enough to step into it, if you will, are unique. And when I find you guys, I love it so much, because this healthcare system needs transformation badly, because the people in it are suffering tremendously. And if you ask the average person, you know, I just heard today that somebody was saying, you know, I don't want to get that medication because it's not covered by insurance. So I'm going to get this medication that's covered by insurance. But within insurance, the whole insurance model, there's so many perverse incentives and so much bureaucracy that it has very little to do. There's no correlation between our goal of staying healthy and well and living a long time and their goals. Their goal is to provide us as, you know, Band-Aids and aspirin and get us out as quickly as possible. So I really appreciate it. So you went to medical school, and I got it. It was very hard. You studied a lot. You're a smart guy. You came out of school. You started practicing. You're an ENT, right?
Yeah, so head and neck surgeon and sleep medicine. Yeah.
Right. So you started off with that.
Yeah. So I had all these different angles to evaluate human beings falling apart, right? Both, you know, on the surface, in, you know, laboratory studies, and then physically inside. I mean, you know, as a head and neck surgeon, you know, Juliana was asking about Hashimoto's. I mean, I've touched that gland. You know, that gland, you know, no one will know this other than a surgeon, but if I took your thyroid, who's a totally normal thyroid, and I put it on the table, and I said, I want you to touch that, right? And I wish I had like a good like fruit analogy that I could say this, it's like a watermelon. I mean, there is no example, but, and then I took a Hashimoto's gland. The best thing I can tell you is, and this is not completely accurate, but I'm trying to make it, you know, tangible. So if I took a bowl of Jell-O, okay, and, you know, it has some softness to it, it has a little wiggle, it has some, you know, some life there. And I took like rubber cement that had like sat out for like a year, where it's really rubbery, firm, and it's like, it doesn't have much give, it doesn't really jiggle at all. It's just, that could be the difference of your thyroid gland, one being diseased and one being normal. And, you know, you can't appreciate the function of the thyroid, but when the structure changes like that, the function has to be changing. And I would often, you know, oftentimes in the office be doing ultrasounds of the thyroid, and I would ask people, are you taking medicine? You taking thyroid replacement? And they would say, no, not yet, no. And I said, well, you know, don't be surprised if that happens, because I saw the changes of the Hashimoto's already happening in their gland, and their labs were not even going to show it yet. And that's the thing about disease, that we all think about, you know, we're healthy until we're not healthy, until the doctor says you have Hashimoto's. But you've had Hashimoto's for a long time, because the architectural changes and the inflammatory changes and the autoimmune changes that have to occur have probably been going on for 5, 10, maybe 15 years before you hit the pay dirt where you can't actually, you know, make the thyroid hormone enough.
So okay. So let me, before we do the hormone, the thyroid, I want to know, like, after you worked in medicine for 10 years, you were billing insurance. This was your own practice, or you worked in a practice?
I was a solo practitioner. So
this was your own practice. So you did the insurance collections. You had the clients come through with their insurance card. You did all that. You had staff, I imagine, to do all the collections and that. Right. And at what point were you frustrated enough to say, okay, I'm leaving this whole thing and I'm going to do my own thing? When did that happen? What happened?
I was starting to try and do my own thing in the context of, you know, the practice that I had. And what that equated to was, for patients that I knew for a long time and who knew me and trusted me, and I could start giving them some of these, like, because, you know, a lot of this we're talking about is lifestyle intervention. And unfortunately, a pill can be written in a prescription in literally 30 seconds, and a lifestyle change requires a lot of communication. And so you can't do that in literally a minute. And so I would sometimes, you know, break it down for some of my longstanding patients who knew me and were looking for, you know, I knew they wanted, you know, something more. And I knew that I didn't have anything more, except I had to now open up this new can for them. And I would do that. And, you know, we're talking about at least a 15, 20-minute investment to just open the door and get them to see this new field that's now in the horizon. And that would completely screw up your schedule. I mean, you can imagine if you know, the average, you know, visit, you're supposed to be seeing somebody for 8 minutes, right? And then you got, you know, 10 minutes of computer work that are associated with that. So to take 20 minutes in the middle, and you do that once or twice, and then you get one patient who's late, you could see you're going to really throw yourself off. And so it was really a challenge to do, but I was, I was kind of finding the people that were looking for something that I had nothing else, and I was trying to feed it to them, but it was very much a challenge. And then through a variety of synchronicities in my life, some stuff that was going on personally, it just became the right time. And I just said enough, because it was, I remember, and people will find this, maybe find this hard to believe, but I remember I had a hard time going to work for like about 2 months. And I don't know if it was depression, it was like professional depression, because I felt like I wasn't doing the right thing. It wasn't like clinical depression. It was like, if you're, I guess the biggest thing I could say is, in New York, we have, Rangers, Islanders, we have Jets, Giants. It's like being a Jets fan and going to a Giants game. You're in the wrong place. This is not your team anymore. You're like, these are not my fans, or not, these are not my people. And so I realized that I wasn't able to give the goods that I felt were the right tools. And so, you can't expect somebody to come to you looking for different services other than what they sought you out for. And so that was the problem, is I had to completely leave so that I could only attract people that were looking for these sort of answers.
Yeah, no, that's a great story, and I've heard a few doctors. There's the Atlas Center. I don't know if you've heard of this doctor. He graduated from school. I don't remember his name. I interviewed him some years ago. He graduated from school. He got into medicine. 2 years into it, he was like, "This is not what I signed up for." So he opened his own practice, and he just charged people a small monthly fee to be a part of his practice. Got rid of all insurances. He still, made medications available, made agreements with different pharmaceutical companies to give them discounted medications. And he created this ecosystem that I was just so inspired to hear in the midst of all this bureaucracy, to have someone that's so forward thinking and could see the matrix. So few can actually see it. So I love your story. I think it's very inspirational. I wish more doctors would take these steps, because I think if enough physicians saw the light and took that step towards it, and then we can create a system that gets rid of 90% of the bureaucracy, create a direct relationship between doctor and client, and you have the time necessary to solve a lot of these undercurrents that people are dealing with. So, because that's going to take time. It's going to take research. You got to get to know these people. You can't expect to pop it. Like when I was 19, I owned a repair shop. So if you have a car that you never saw before that pops in with some kind of an intermittent problem and they expect you to fix it like immediately, it's almost impossible. But if you know the driver, if you know the car, they've been coming to you for a long time, you have a sense of what's happening. It's a very different experience. You have a lot of connection to the person in the car, and you want to make a difference. So, but the way the system is set up now, we're just a number. We show up at a doctor's office for the most part that we never met before. They see us for 3 minutes, prescribe a medication. I went to one doctor. I don't know if I mentioned this before. They actually invited me because they wanted to market their practice. This was in the city. This was maybe 5-6 years ago. So he had this aesthetic center, and I walked in. They had me sitting in the waiting room for about 20 minutes. Finally, they walked me into this doctor's office. This doctor came from the medical field, so he decided to open this concierge center. But he was still medical. So we were sitting there. I was sitting in front of him. He was looking at the computer to the side and talking to me. I've never seen anything like it. I mean, no interpersonal communication, it was just the weirdest thing ever. So what I'm saying is that the system breeds these people that would never operate the same way in a regular free market economy, where you have to be connected. Great, you know your stuff, but people still have to like you. They have to trust you. They have to believe you can help them. All these fundamental things have to be there. But in the regular allopathic model, I just don't see it.
Yeah, and that's why, my origin story of, coming up and talking about, the blue blocking glasses and the light and the melatonin story, which I'll switch over to now appropriately so, it became from this exact fact. I hated doctors that sat in front of a computer and didn't look at the patient in the eyes and didn't talk to them. And so I would do that, and I would often not be able to keep up with the I say paperwork, the computer work. And so I would go home at night and I would sit in front of the computer at night after putting the kids to bed and finish typing up all this ridiculous information that had nothing to do with actually helping anybody for an hour or so. And as the story goes, I would, 11 o'clock would come and I'd be tired and wired. I wouldn't really be ready to go to sleep, but I knew I had to go to sleep. I'd wake up, I'd be a little groggy, not feel so well. And so at that time I had a pair of really, I would never wear them here to show you, but a pair of goggles that would go over the top of my glasses. And so I just started doing that in front of the laptop, do my homework, and I'd start yawning, and then I was like, oh, and then I'd go to sleep and then I'd wake up and I'd feel good. And, 3 months later, I get on the scale and I'm 7 pounds lighter, and I haven't gone to the gym and I haven't changed what I was eating. And, I think that's, Elisa mentioned, the power of light. And, that's really what I've dedicated, beyond just, looking at more root cause, or what people like to call, integrative or functional medicine, but understanding the light, the electromagnetic parts of us, because here's the advantage that light has over all the other things that you can take. Light is nonlinear. So when you take, we'll call it pill A, powder A, potion A, you only can get a 1-for-1 effect of that pill, powder, or potion. It's very linear. If you have a really big problem, you got to take tons of powder or tons of, the bigger and bigger dose. Light has such a way of creating so many effects all from one, so that it can actually do hundreds of thousands of things in 1 second. And, if you don't do anything to control the light in your life, all these other things that we talk about doing become less and less effective, because light will have a much bigger effect on your body because it's nonlinear. So 1 unit of light can be 100 units of good or bad if you choose wisely. It's not a 1-for-1.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about regenerative medicine, and also how light affects the thyroid. You when we spoke with Kim Alexis,
Yeah.
you mentioned that the computer light, and because I didn't know that, like, your clothes can actually protect you.
So your sternal notch, which is this little point right here, this is a landmark for thyroid surgery, and for most people, most women particularly, your thyroid is mostly above that notch. For men, we tend to have more barrel chest, so our thyroid can sit a little bit lower. And especially in a shirt like this, even my sternal notch is not really shown, and the wings of my collared shirt kind of cover the wings because the thyroid is like a butterfly. It looks like that. So we cover up a lot of our thyroid just by daily wear. Unless you're wearing a tank top, you're even then, you're the clavicle, the bone, the skin, the soft tissues. In a male, there's more tissue in front of the thyroid. And there was a study, I want to say 4 or 5 years ago, associating blue light exposure with thyroid cancer. And, there's a variety of mechanisms that can happen. One is just directly through the eye and with melatonin, because melatonin changes a whole bunch of other hormones, and there can be downstream effects from that. But there can be literally a direct damage, because blue light penetrates about 1 centimeter, and the thyroid is about, within 1 centimeter of your skin. And so we have blue light receptors in our fat, in our blood vessels, and we have fat and blood vessels certainly within the 1st centimeter of our skin. And so that's a way that we can create direct damage on those cells, and mitochondrial damage as well, which is the energy of regeneration. And when you create all this damage in your face and your skin, what is that going to mean? I think it's going to mean faster aging, faster diseases of aging, and more inflammation. And, I can tell you, if you look around, 30-year-olds look like they're 40, 40-year-olds look like they're 50, and 50-year-olds look like they're 60. And so you have to say, where's the beef, right? In other words, and again, toxicities, yes, all these things, absolutely. But what are we most exposed to every day? Light, artificial light, and it ages you. And if you don't know how to use it, you're going to age faster. And I've seen that. And I remember in my practice saying, how can this person be the same age as me? When I would walk in the room and say, how can this person be the same age as me? It's just not even possible. They look 10 years older. People think I look, 10 years younger than I am, but it's not just that. I mean, even just amongst their peers, if you just took everybody, I mean, it's not the same. And when we were young, people that were 30 and 40 looked a lot younger than they do today.
Yep. So Juliana is, she is dealing with Hashimoto's, right? So first of all, I with Hashimoto's, is that reversible at all? I mean, is there any?
So I mean, the thing about Hashimoto's that is not well communicated by the endocrinologists is, first off, they don't really look at the thyroid in general probably the way it should, and that's not fair because that's their training. And again, you have to go outside of your training to really understand it. But Hashimoto's is one of the few thyroid conditions where it isn't a thyroid condition. And we forget that. We lose track because what's the treatment for Hashimoto's disease? If you ask an endocrinologist, putting them on thyroid replacement. So whether it's Synthroid, Armour, or some other thyroid, replacement or bioidentical type hormone, that is not the problem. The problem is not lack of thyroid hormone. The problem is the autoimmune damage of the thyroid, right? So really, you got to go back in line and you got to stop the autoimmune damage, right? And so that's when you get on these autoimmune type diets and such, you're lowering a lot of the dietary stimulants that are confusing your immune system to attack your thyroid, right? And so that's why, anybody with Hashimoto's is probably going to be gluten-free, probably should be limiting dairy as well, looking at nightshades and all these things. Why? Because these things trick the immune system and create more inflammation, right? Inflammation is the cause of all disease. So, you have to start addressing the immune system in Hashimoto's, and thyroid replacement does not address the immune system. And so therein lies the biggest deficit in the thyroid treatment that goes on today, is that we're not dealing with the thyroid problem. We're dealing with an immune system issue.
Well, I can see Juliana's frustration because, she's talking about vitamin D, K2. I mean, Barberine. I mean, she's like becoming her own medical professional.
Right.
And I can appreciate it because that's the journey I took. I started becoming my own medical professional. I didn't want to know this much about medicine. That was not my goal. And what happens is, you have 330 million people in the United States, and those who are proactive enough to want to get to the root cause, they become their own health professionals. So what that takes is you got to read, dozens and hundreds of books. You got to listen to different people. You got to try different things. But then you have 320 million people all doing their own thing, and nobody's learning on like a mass, So, what I would say to Juliana, having was diagnosed with psoriatic arthritis myself like 20 years ago, is that, you need somebody that you can work with. Like when you want to lose weight and build muscle, you get a personal trainer, because sometimes we ourselves are pretty useless in the gym, because we don't know what we're doing, a lot of us. But if you get a personal trainer who's training, 10, 20, 30, 100 people, these people really know how to hit important things and push you to do what's necessary to get to your goal. The same thing here. I think if you have somebody working directly with you and helping you address all these things and try different ideas and concepts and supplements and nutritional approaches to heal the digestive system, understand your genetics, because if you can detoxify, you have the MTHFR or whatever, so your body's not able to detoxify. How do we get the detoxification pathways cleared? How do we heal the gut so you're not inflamed and your immune system is not attacking itself? Like, how do we achieve all that? So the system has to change. And work, like if she were to work with somebody like you, you're a medical doctor, you have a tremendous amount of training, you're concierge, you're very expensive for the average person, right? But if we can have
right, that we're all used to, that's in the thing of the past, but we're all coming from the system of a $20 copay being kind of our
right. So the mentality is definitely a problem, because people won't think twice about buying a Gucci bag for $5,000 or spinners for their car. But when they go to a doctor who can help them maintain and extend their most valuable possession themselves, we've been taught to think that, okay, the first question is like, who's going to pay for that? Where else do you go and do that? You come into a restaurant. Usually it's like, I got the check, I got the check, I got the check. But you go to the doctor, no, it's $20. Oh my God. So it's the funniest dynamic there. So, Juliana, what I would say is that, you have to think creating context. You have to think of working with someone on an ongoing basis and let them get to know you, and then have access to doctors like Dr. Rosenthal, who can guide them as a professional to really figure out what's going on. But if you try to do it yourself, this do-it-yourself human optimization thing, believe me, it can be so frustrating. It could be so frustrating, and the time goes by. And then the situation only gets worse, And what happens also is like, you get into these moods, right? You're like, all right, I really want to heal this. So this week I'm doing this thing and I'm taking these supplements and I'm going to do it. And then next week you're like, okay, you forget about it. You start going out, you go for a drink, you sit on the couch, you binge some Netflix. So that's what happens. We should not be our own healers. Ultimately, that's like, in court, if you're representing yourself, you know what that is. So that's what it is.
I also say that we're very impatient as human beings, and just taking this Hashimoto's idea, by the time you're diagnosed with Hashimoto's, you've probably had this for at least 5 or more years, right? 5 to maybe even 15 years. So to think that in 5 months you can fix what took 5 years, right, is kind of only a human mind could have that audacity to think I'm going to fix this in 5 days, right? You know what I mean? 1 week of supplements, and people have done a lot of different things and spent a lot of time and made a lot of efforts, and it's frustrating when you don't get the results you want. I mean, we all know that. But keep in mind, and keeping Hashimoto's as the topic of this conversation, there's 2 parts to healing this, right? One is you have to calm the immune system down and stop the ongoing damage. But once we take away the damage, right, it's like, if there was a fire in your bedroom, first you're going to put out the fire. The room doesn't fix itself. I mean, maybe the insurance company comes in and gives you some money, but somebody has to go in and regenerate your bedroom after the fire has happened. And, that's the other part, is that the damage to the thyroid, unless you do something to help regenerate it, is going to now needs work. So there's 2 parts. You got to fix the immune part first, and then you got to rebuild and regenerate the tissues. And again, in a world where you're exposed to all these signals that are causing damage on a regular basis, that means it's that much harder to regenerate, especially when you can't sleep. Your artificial light is causing you to not get into regenerative sleep. These are all the issues.
So we definitely have a major problem with the way the healthcare system is created. We have a major problem in the philosophical approach to care, because like Juliana, nobody came to her 15 years ago and say, listen, it looks like your vitamin D is low. It looks like this particular food is inflaming your digestion, so you're not absorbing the nutrition from it. So your immune system is beginning to attack whatever you're leaking into your bloodstream. And that autoimmune condition this inflammatory autoimmune condition is now attacking your thyroid. So why don't we alter your diet a little bit, put you on these supplements, heal your gut? Nobody went to her 15 years ago because nobody is interested. The system is interested in her today because now she has a problem and she becomes like a prisoner of this system. She's got to go to the doctor. She's got to bring her card. She's got to do the $20 copay. She's got to take the medication, and probably for the rest of her life. That's the way the system is set up. And I think it's so backward and so too little too late. So we need to, like, as intelligent people, get together, right? You have a brilliant doctor here, Dr. Rosenthal. We have brilliant people here who understand there's a problem with the system. And we bring the people back together. Healthcare, true healthcare, like human optimization healthcare, does not have to be ridiculously expensive. It gets expensive when you're 15 years down the road and you enter this bureaucracy. So there it is.
Yeah, and I think, if there was one thing that could help change the world, right, it's we don't talk about our health and we don't talk about our life, healthy lifestyle habits, or, we think we're doing stuff that's healthy, but maybe we're not. And that's a lot of misinformation. But if you're doing something or you learn something that's helping you, I feel like if everybody could just share it with one or two people, right, your close friends, and this way we could create the grassroots effort, because there is so much to undo. There's, the whole idea of nutrition, and, just think of what we grew up on with the food pyramid and all this stuff. I mean, if that's your only, experience of learning nutrition as an adult, then if somebody comes across and says, hey, look, I read this book and here's all this stuff, let me teach you one thing, like gluten's really bad for you, and if that's news to somebody, you may have just saved their life, because, the amount of inflammation that's going to become from that point on for the rest of their life when they continue doing these habits. So, and that's the thing you were talking about is, you need a relationship with somebody. What I do is lifestyle dissection. I no longer dissect human body parts. I dissect their behaviors, their lifestyle, their thoughts, because thinking begets action, right? So how do you change a lifestyle? How do you change a behavior? First, you got to think better. You got to understand it. When you don't understand what you're doing, if I told you to do handstands every day, and that's the secret to health, most people would say that's absurd, I'm not going to do it. But then if I could give you the science, and I'm not saying there's science behind this, I'm just making this up as an example. If I said, yeah, by increasing your blood flow and it changes it, and then I gave you this whole story scientifically that made a ton of sense, and you could go out on the internet and back up all the research and say, wow, this does, I'm going to start doing my handstands, and that's how I look at what healthcare really needs to become. You have to learn, you have to understand so you could change, because without the lifestyle part, there is no pill that will keep you healthy today without changing your lifestyle.
I would say also that there's what you mentioned, the misinformation, and this it seems to me, I could be wrong, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but it seems to me that there's some kind of a collusion happening between the media, the government, and the medical system. So, sometimes you have the media attacking things like vitamin C. They attack basic things that we know are important for optimal health and well-being: coconut oil, saturated fat, like all these things. So if you're not connected, if you're not tethered to somebody that can say, no, this is nonsense, okay, this is what we need to be doing because I have the results, I've worked with enough people to see how the difference is made. So if we're not tethered to some kind of a source that can actually provide us with actual information that benefits us, like somebody on our side, like our attorney representing us, fighting for us, then the system is going to look to manipulate us, misinform us, and push us in a direction that benefits it, not us. So copays are $40. Yeah.
Well, now everything goes to the doctor. Now it's all a copay. The whole.
I haven't been to a regular doctor in over 30 years, other than these. I went to a couple of dermatologists, which were, I find, when I go in there, I have this skeptical look on my face, and they're like, "Well, you should try this biologics." I said, "Well, they're immunosuppressant." "No, it doesn't suppress your immune system." "I think it suppresses your immune system." They go, "Yeah, you're right, and I'm right. It does suppress your immune system, but only a part of your immune system, and sometimes, not all the time." Funny people. But so the system that we have today doesn't work. We need a better system. And you guys who are here today, I'm going to invite you to go to a site, take a look at the presentation of the system that we're designing, where we have a family nurse practitioner assigned directly to you, who becomes the world expert in you. And then they have access to doctors like Dr. Rosenthal and some of the top functional medicine doctors in the country, who they consult with. And then they work on optimizing you on a regular, ongoing basis. So we look to do your genetics, we do your blood, we do your digestion, we do your toxicity levels, and then we optimize you. When the body has everything it needs to make a brand new cell that's buoyant and healthy, vivacious, and we get rid of any interference with that process, then whatever things that are ailing you, there's a 90% chance that they're going to resolve themselves by themselves. But if you start focusing on the problem, all you're going to have is more problem. So I'll put the website here for you. Take a look at the presentation. ScHO.com. And if it rings your bell, then I'll give you 50% off that first year through the optimization process. And like for Juliana, for example, like, I mean, you can bounce yourself around. I appreciate you coming here. I really do. I think it's amazing that you're searching. But if you're just trying to do it yourself, you know, I would hate to see you be frustrated for another decade. I mean, there's just no reason for that. If there's a resolution to the issue, then we have to tap the world's most brilliant people. And it could be like the simplest thing that needs to be adjusted or fixed or removed or added. And you know, miracles happen out of that. Am I right or am I wrong?
Yeah, sometimes it's that one thing you're not looking at. And that's really the goal of this side of the fence, is to find that, shine the light on the one thing that you need to change.
Yeah. So, well, very good. So we didn't really get a chance to speak too much about the regenerative medicine, but you know, some of the miraculous things that you have done and that I've seen you do with people make you unique in this regard. Not a lot of physicians do this kind of work, I imagine. I don't think so.
Well, again, it's a paradigm shift. You know, you leave medical school thinking most things can't be fixed. They could be cut out, you know, but they can't be returned and reset to the natural state, the default condition, right? And so you first have to believe that that's possible. And, you know, that's, again, as somebody who came out, that wasn't my training, is I was going to, you know, try to shape you into the best version that you could be, but I wasn't going to be able to get you back to the most optimal way that you were born. You know, I mean, but that should be the goal. And that's, you know, the only way to do that is to use your body's own divine wisdom. You know, there is nothing that I have that could be as strong. I can just turn on, you know, parts of your body's wisdom that contain your own DNA blueprint, that contain all the instructions to make a whole nother, you know, you, and then put those and direct those to where you need them. You know, maybe it's your kidneys because you have kidney disease. Maybe it's your knee because you know you can't walk and your knee's falling apart. Maybe it's your brain because you know you have all this inflammation and inflammatory disease, and you know maybe you have beginning of dementia or you have Parkinson's, and you want to restore those tissues. And if you could just add enough energy and information back into the system will do exactly what it was born to do, which is make you work well. You know, and that's probably the coolest thing and the most important message, is to know, if you're listening to this, your body has the instructions to fix yourself. You don't need anybody else's help. You just need to turn that back on. Now, I'm not saying that that's easy, but it's layers upon layers for some. But at least if you recognize that it's possible, that's the first barrier to entry here.
In a few minutes that we have left, we're just going to run it till 8 o'clock. I think an hour. We did a nice job. What do you see? What do you see some of the opportunities in healthcare? What kind of technology? What kind of science? What kind of supplements, medications? What are you optimistic about?
Yeah, I mean, I think the future of medicine is combining the physics with some of the stuff we're doing. So, perfect example is what we call photodynamic therapy. So I can take light therapy, which is very powerful, and I can combine it with compounds that the light therapy enhances in a way that makes it, you know, synergistic, right? And so, or it makes the compound do way more stuff than it could ever do. And, you know, to me, you know, the goal, you know, my entire practice of medicine, my entire outside endeavors of science are focused towards mitochondrial health. And that may not mean anything today, but I promise you in 5 or 10 years, it will mean something, because people will really understand that that is the key. That is the key that opens the door to anything you're looking for: regeneration, longevity, you know, feeling well, wherever stage you are in this process. You know, some of us are really healthy and we're trying to get super healthy. Some are really broken and we're trying to just function. Some are functioning but want to function. But it doesn't matter where you're on that spectrum. The answer is it's all mitochondrial function. I can slide you up and down by just changing the amount of energy in the target cells of your body. And this has been shown in the lab. This is, I mean, it's not my opinion. You can go Google Doug Wallace. He's the #1 mitochondrial researcher in the country at the University of Pennsylvania. He's got a couple of grand rounds, so look for an hour-long talk with his name, Doug Wallace, at a UPenn. And he's done this with diseases that are terrible diseases, and he's showed them that you can reverse it in a cell by changing mitochondrial function. So that should be groundbreaking. Everybody on this call should have heard of that, but nobody's heard of that, right? And the bottom line is we know it can be done. So it's just a matter of doing it. And, I think we've come a long way in the, decade that I've been kind of on the other side of the fence and looking at all this. And it's only going to keep getting better and better because light therapy is now getting accepted mainstream. Maybe not in your doctor's office, but certainly in the integrative and alternative worlds, people understand how powerful this is because it's a mitochondrial therapy. And, they've been using photodynamic therapy for cancer treatments for a long time where they can use medicine that they can target to a certain area and the light can activate it and turn it on where they want it. I mean, the abilities here are endless. And they've been doing stuff called optogenetics for a long time where they use light to turn on genes in cells. So, I mean, this stuff is it's not science fiction. It's in the lab. It's in the benchtop. It's happening in labs across the country. It's just a matter of the translational research, which takes us into doing this in real life humans on the next gen. We're already doing it, but now doing more of that and advancing and getting even further.
Awesome. Well, Aliza, you're an amazing participant. Next time you'll run this show because you did such a great job. We have Barbara Bartlick, Barbara Muckle, Bastian, Christine, and everybody. Thank you so much for joining us here. I would just say that, remember that the most beautiful, powerful, and remarkable creation on this planet is not a bush, it's not a tree, it's not a mountain, it's not the ocean, it's you. And so whatever you need to do to take care of yourself and find the healing, keep searching, because if a cure exists, you're going to find it. Dr. Josh, thank you so much. I appreciate you doing this with us. And everyone who joined us, thank you. Have a great night. We'll see you next Wednesday. We'll do something next Wednesday. I'm off, but the following Wednesday.
Thank you.
All right. Josh, thank you, my friend.